Good evening, Ken.
Good to see everyone. According to everything on this end, we are streaming live, whether we want to or not, right now. So, it's going out, says the connection is excellent. So I want to welcome everyone, especially everyone in the live audience. And yes, we do have a live audience. If I want to, I can show everybody. Audience. Here we go. Here's the audience. All right, now, so, it looks like our camera froze up when I moved it. Not good. All right. Now it did freeze up.
Well, they can still hear us, right?
Well, I can fix it real quick.
When I moved. Okay.
All right.
Ron. Okay.
We sure should be.
I was just telling the audience, I froze up the camera because I've got a face made for radio. And they all got a big laugh out of that. Since I've heard complaints about our groaner-type jokes, I said, well, I'll show them. I'll just tell two groaners this time. See how they like that? We on? Yep, I see you. Okay, we're on. What do you call a fish? What do you call a shark, a big one, who eats a bunch of locks? You call him Lockjaw. Somebody got it. Think about it. Okay. I was listening to the news just a few minutes ago to see what was current. They were talking about it yesterday. You all probably know Boris Johnson with the wild haircut. It looks like they put a bowl on his head and just, anyway, that's how it looks to me. I'm sure he probably likes it, but they call him the British Trump. They all look a little bit alike, and maybe except both have outrageous hairstyles, but one's more outrageous than the other. Anyway, Boris Johnson supposedly worked with this German guy a few days ago, and he's got a much better exit deal for Britain, but they say getting it through the British Parliament is going to be tough. He doesn't have the Conservatives don't have a full majority. British politics are complicated. He's got to get about 19 or 20. The Labour is the more socialist party in England. He's got to get 19 Labour votes to put it over. And they were saying he has half of it already. He's working the phones. They're going to have a special Saturday meeting of Parliament, probably go all night to iron it out. Now, I'm going to tell you why this could be prophetically an important step. If you look at the middle of this page that you all have, it's called the King of the South and the King of the North. If Ken can put that up on the screen, you can see it. Ken's going to read it for us, and then we're going to discuss how we think what Boris Johnson would probably do tomorrow could be a prophetic step in that direction. Well, we'll see, I guess. It might not mean anything, and then again, it might be very significant. Can we go to this one?
You want to skip down?
Can you skip? Are you able to skip down?
Yeah.
We're working. Ken's working on it right now.
Where are we going to?
40, King of the South. We'll get to the others later. Keep going, I think.
Daniel?
This is it.
All right.
Yeah.
At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through.
Now this, when we look at Daniel, I'll just put it in context. Then we'll discuss Boris Johnson, what may be going on, and you all can, give me your opinion. The way Daniel describes it, there are two major kings came out of the previous empire, and the two strong ones were the king of the north and the king of the south. The king of the south was headquartered in Egypt. The king of the north was further north. We could maybe say Asia Minor, Europe. So the church has always assumed that the European power is king of the north, the Middle Eastern power is king of the south. Something surprised me. I was watching Fox News about a month and a half ago. Tucker Carlson said something that I only thought church people would say. He called the European Union the new German Empire.
I've heard a few different people make that reference, just like 2 or 3. But I've seen it and seen articles that referenced the new European Union as the German Empire.
Any thoughts, Kelly?
Well, I mean, we know Germany's going to come back and strengthen, and they're positioning themselves to do that. And I think you're going to see with the immigration that they've had, that's going to drive the nation to become more of a purist type nation, which is what drove Hitler back in his day. So I can see it being set up to make those moves.
Now, here's what I think Germany really runs it, and people will debate that, but if you look at the Europe as I think I see it, all the countries in Europe, especially the ones with financial problems like Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, and maybe 1 or 2 others, and occasionally Ireland, you know who's financially bailed them out and kept things going?
Germany.
Germany. For whatever reason, the 5 toes were iron and 5 toes were clay. That seems to be the way Europe has been shaking out. Germany and some of their allies are the iron, because Germany, their highest award is the Iron Cross. They're the Iron Kingdom. And even, I'd say, a good chunk of France is kind of more like clay than iron. So since Germany's been financially bailing them all out, they owe Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons, I'll just talk about our trip to Europe, we could see it. We were in France on this bus with a bunch of students. And in France, people parked on sidewalks. Traffic was absolutely chaos. It was like disorder, weird stuff. As soon as we crossed the border into Germany, it was like order. People, they had little crosswalks. Every car would stop, let the passengers shoot. Just seemed like everything was order, discipline. Whatever is forbidden in Germany is forbidden. Any country with that kind of, and they have a lot of patriotism, the Germans do, any country with that kind of discipline is going to economically be the winner. What do you think, Ken?
Yeah, absolutely. The more control, the more organized, the better any corporation does to keep everything in line. And I think it was Carnegie who said, mind the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves. So if you're really checking your boxes and crossing your T's and dotting your I's, you have a much better chance of being successful.
And the Germans supposedly have an ethics toward hard work. See, a lot of countries, you give too many big social programs and the people get lazy and weak. But the Germans, at least supposedly, I believe it's probably true in most cases, like hard work, so their socialism doesn't mess them up, or they don't actually, all those countries say they're capitalistic with big social programs. And that's probably the best accurate way to put it. But they are the economic engine that drives Europe. And here's what I think, if I were one of the German leaders, here's what I think in World War II. But also, they don't want anybody else trying to get out. We got to really make them painful to get out, so nobody else dares get out. And think about it, if you're in the European Union and you can't get out, you're afraid if you get out, they'll destroy your economy, but other people are running it, they really control you. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts, Kelly?
That's what I would call an economic blitzkrieg. I mean, they control the economy, then they control you. And it's one of the ways that another country can actually rule over a country without invading it is through economics.
It's almost as if Germany has achieved what they didn't do in 2 world wars. They've done through the EU, and I guess you might call it diplomatic and economic grand strategy. Does that make sense?
No. I think Hitler would be proud of what they've accomplished. As sad as that is to say, he would be happy what they've pulled off.
Now, those who have been in the church for years, you remember when the European Union got bigger in the 80s and 90s, and everybody thought it was the thing, and everybody thought, a united Europe, that's so wonderful. Our church said, no, this is bad, 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 and Britain will not be part of it because of their Anglo-Saxon Jacob, connection. And we said that long before this Brexit started, that Britain would not be part of it. Here's what we think has happened. Boris Johnson has gotten a much better deal. But in Britain, British politics are like American politics. The press is mean over there. And the liberals are mean over there. And maybe everybody's a little mean, but it's petty. I mean, I'm not saying American politics aren't petty, but British politics are petty too. And getting their parliament to agree to any deal, Theresa May could make no progress with Europe. She could make no progress with her own parliament. And I'm just curious, they say Boris Johnson is a get things done kind of guy. He was certainly able to deal better with Europe than Theresa May did, so any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he strikes me to be similar to Trump, that he really doesn't care about people's feelings or the politics of it. He's just looking to get the job done. And so when you do that, it's just like President Trump has had, you stomp on toes, you make people upset, and they're like, their heads are exploding because this is not how politics is supposed to be.
Any thoughts, Ken?
I don't have nothing to add to that. No, I think he's exactly right. That's where we're going.
And I remember when Boris Johnson said, we're going to get on October 31st, I guess Halloween Eve. Everybody laughed. They'll never be able to do it by that time. He just barely got to be prime minister just a few weeks ago. And everybody was laughing. I even heard him a couple of days ago say, Britain is not going to be out by October 31st. He's just kidding himself. Now, obviously, I can't predict what will happen in their all-day marathon. I think this is only second in recent history Saturday meeting of the British Parliament. They did it when the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher, was saying we should go to war over the Falkland Islands. They had a Saturday meeting, and she convinced enough of them that they shouldn't let their island be taken away from them by force. I'm just curious, do you think Boris Johnson will succeed? He's still got to flip 8 or 9 Labour Party members.
My gut says that the EU and the powers over there will never let this happen, but that said, if God wants them out, they're out. But the powers that be will stop at nothing to keep them from getting out.
I think Germany wants to make it painful for Britain to leave, make it hard, because there are a couple other countries that say, we might want out too. They don't want to scare anybody. Nobody else better dare think about leaving. And those countries, the scary thing is in '95, they gave up much of their sovereign power to the EU Parliament, which is stupid. I mean, I'm saying that, does that sound stupid? You give up your power to a collection of other countries?
Yeah, I mean, why would I want another country telling my country what we're to do and can't do and how we do it? I mean, you're giving up your freedoms when you do that. Now, just real quick, if anybody has a question or a comment, if you'll raise your hand, we want to get a mic on you so that the people can hear you and we can hear you. John there has the microphone and he will stick it in your face.
I was just going to say, one world government. When you get the United States of Europe, you're getting real close to one world government.
Yeah.
And you get Ephraim and Manasseh out of that, so there you go.
I think a lot of globalists, that's probably how they would describe themselves in America and Europe, especially the Labour Party people in Britain, they want Britain to be global and not, let's say, British patriotism, British pride. They don't want any of that. They want globalism. They want to stay in the EU, and they're going to put up an evil battle tomorrow in the British Parliament. It's not going to be, well, it probably will get nasty. If you ever read some history books about Winston Churchill's discussions in the British Parliament, boy, he criticized his critics and made fun of them, which he probably shouldn't have done, but their debates were brutal over there. So my guess is, And a lot of Americans would like America to sort of blend into some kind of global government, which is not going to happen. But let me, that scripture about the king of the south and the king of the north. If the king of the north is a united Europe, which probably will also have, we think, controls over at least certain parts of Africa and almost all of Latin America. Because Latin America, the Latin part is, they're kind of Roman Catholic. But if Europe is going to be led by two people, a religious leader and a civil leader, the religious leader, I like the term super pope. You like that term?
It'll work.
He won't be like the average pope, he'll be a super pope. But he'll help will the people to get there. And we don't know just how big and powerful this European Union will get, but it will be big. It will, it'll be so big that it'll just, people will say, and you'll see in the book of Daniel, who can fight the beast? Like his military power will seem so overwhelming. And obviously he's going to beat the king of the south quickly, just like that. By the way, let's discuss the king of the south for a minute. The man in charge of Turkey, Erdogan. By the way, do you know that the Arab Caliphate, kind of like king of the south, the Caliphate used to be the leader of the Ottoman Empire was the Caliphate for about the 2 previous centuries to this. And then in World War I, the Ottoman Empire joined with the Central Powers, Austria and Germany, against Britain and France and Russia in World War I. And they probably thought they were going to get a bunch of Russian territory, whatever, it didn't work out that way. Anyway, Britain got several of the sub-kings inside of the Ottoman Empire to turn on the Ottoman Empire, and this is a great story, and Britain won. And I'm sure one of those groups was probably the, I get it mixed up, the Kurds. You say the Kurds and a whole bunch of those other groups do not like the Turks. The Turks ruled over them. That doesn't mean they were their buddies. Does that make sense? Erdogan is a real strong man. He's pulled some real stunts. And behind, I know technically Turkey's an American ally. Does anybody trust Erdogan?
No.
No.
I know that other ISIS guy who's still in hiding wants to be the new caliphate. But I'll bet money Erdogan wants to be the new caliphate to run the whole Middle East.
He does. He wants to set himself up as the king of the south. So does Iran. There's several of them that want to set themselves up, and we've all been vying for it. But it looks like right now Erdogan could be the strongest one coming out of it. Not only because they have they're in the UN, but also because Iran, I think, they're coming out of power. The sanctions are crippling them. All the stuff they're doing all over the region are getting all the countries over there wanting them out of the way. So eventually they may push Iran out, and then Erdogan will fill the gap. Or somebody down there is going to fill the gap.
So I watched the Middle East. Probably America's still the big stick in the world. We're still a hegemony that holds the world together. Like when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, he asked the American ambassador, does Washington care? And the American ambassador was some lady who didn't know anything. She said, oh, America doesn't care. Of course, that was the end of Saddam Hussein. So if anybody does anything big, they always ask, what will America do? But little by little, the king of the South could start to form and America could be less involved. That is a possibility. I think we need to at least think about and watch Turkey. Egypt is a possibility too. The leader of Egypt is probably a more shrewd guy than we think. But Turkey is really the strongest country in the Middle East and has been, and I'm sure still is.
Europe
Yes.
Europe has two powers, the government and the religious power. Now, suppose that the king of the south is going to be actually two powers. Erdogan as the political power and one of the ayatollahs as the religious power. How does that work out?
What the lady said was, like in Europe, you have a religious leader and a political leader. Will the same thing be true in the Middle East, where you have a political leader and a religious leader? And who's going to be the religious leader? That is a good question, and I don't know. The one thing about Islam that most people don't know, it's a master-slave religion. That is, the religious leaders tell the worshipers how to behave. You got to, depend on which side of, I know there's a Shiite and the Sunnis, and a few other subgroups. Depending on which group you're in, you got to pray, was it 5 times a day with one of them? We were in the subway in London, and there you can see a spot in people's head. Even though they're in the dirty subway, the time for the call for prayer would be, there are a lot of Islamic people in London, and they would bow on the dirty subway floor for prayer, and they wrote some recited prayer. Apparently, you can get beaten by other Arabs if you don't do what they're supposed to do. I mean, it's a very strict thing. And I'm told that in those countries where there is voting, their imams and, what's the other title they have?
Ayatollahs,
Yeah.
imams,
They tell them how to vote. So, but I don't know enough about the religious leaders to know, but I'm sure somebody is out there plotting and scheming to be the, well, one time, and this is in World War I, and also in World War II, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem was a key factor. And you might find it interesting, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem actually was helping Adolf Hitler in World War II. Even though Britain still had some control in the Middle East, they were trying to help Hitler. They were not, I said the British still had a lot of colonial control. They really weren't pro-British, they were more pro-Hitler. Does that shock you? And I don't think they cared if he killed Jews. And, I know now they deny there was a Holocaust, but even if they believed it were true, they wouldn't care, I don't think. So right now, watch the Middle East and watch Europe. And I think as Britain gets out, German power will be even more, because they're only, how many big, powerful countries are in Europe? France, Germany, and England, right? One of the main things that France did, about 1960, de Gaulle went to Germany and said, why should we Germans and French be killing each other to help the British and the Americans? France almost, in a sense, conceded leadership to Germany. And the early parts of World War II that are most shocking was, actually, in the beginning of World War II, France had the biggest number of soldiers, the biggest army. Now, maybe Germany had the most tanks and the better weapons and planes, but numbers were in France's part. And they had the Maginot defensive line. But when the Germans broke through, you read Churchill stuff, he said, the French don't want to fight. They just collapsed.
Right.
There was no, it's not like they were in World War I where they really fought and fought. They just collapsed.
It didn't help that on that line, they had all their weapons aimed towards Germany, and they couldn't turn them around when they got through the line. So they couldn't fire back on them once they come through the wall. They were done once they got past that wall. Not too bright.
No, defensive warfare has limited value. Well, I think Germany proved, and I think France knows it, and de Gaulle even knew it in his own way. And there's logic for de Gaulle's thinking. I think he didn't like that he had to take orders from the Americans and the British, all during the war. The French are very proud. That's my opinion. France has already conceded. Now, you won't see that in public anymore. No one admits it. But they really know Germany's the leader. Who else is going to lead? And with Britain out of the way, Germany's power is even going to be more so. So I think the European Union will make it hard for Britain to leave, painful, but they will let her leave, and deep, deep down, they'll be glad to see Britain go. So anyway, that's the thought. And so watch the news this weekend and see if Boris Johnson can pull it off. Even if he doesn't pull it off, I still think Britain will get out. It may take a little longer, a little more thrashing around. And they may even have to have another election to get more parliament members that are willing to make the break. I think the British people, the majority, want out. Their liberal press and the liberal politicians don't want to let them out. I guess we could go to any scripture you all want to talk about next. You got the list in front of you, or anything else that you'd like to talk about Bible prophecy. Any way we could turn the air conditioning warmer?
They're all shaking out there. I thought it was my glasses going, but it's...
Well, see, everybody move closer.
Usually everybody wants to hear about prophecy, but we don't seem to have any questions. So.
I'll tell you what, let's go to the next one, 2 Timothy, that
All right.
scripture, the next one in line. We know I'd move back to the others as we need to. This is one that I would just like to discuss because I think, anyway, I'll tell you why, what you all think.
All right. 2 Timothy 3:1. But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power, and from such people turn away. Sounds like Washington, D.C.
Now, obviously God inspired Paul to see what the people in the end time would be like. And I think one of the questions you can ask is, if a united Europe, which might be bigger and more powerful than we even imagine. By the way, and historically, in the Holy Roman Empire, the capital was Rome, but the military power was in Germany. And you read up on it, and you'll see that's been true in many cases. I can't remember all the different emperors, but you can. But the best legions were from Gaul. That was roughly the center of Europe, which is mostly parts of France and all of Germany and Hungary and Austria. Those were where the toughest legions of the Roman Empire came from. That model, and by the way, Hitler and Mussolini called their little empire, they called it the Holy Roman Empire, and they did have a deal with the Vatican. Maybe it wasn't as big as the one they're going to get in the future. But think about what they did in Europe. And the Catholic Church was like 97% of all Europe is Catholic, and they were able to pull that off. You know, the church had to kind of wink and a nod. They don't admit that now, so you'll never hear anybody admit it, but it's going to come one more time. Now, my question is, right now that could not happen because America is too strong. America has to decline before that time, and Britain too. Britain's already well on its way to decline. Would you all agree?
Yeah.
You know, a couple years ago, the British actually, they used to be masters of the sea. They actually had no warships at sea. They only had like 4 or 5 warships and one carrier. They're all in dock being repaired. At one time, they had no carriers, and then everybody complained. I think they finally built one. And that's how, and by the way, you want to know what happened to the mighty British Navy? It was eaten up by their health care plan. That's what one writer said. They got into advanced socialism, and it ate so much of the budget, they couldn't afford their Navy anymore. I'm not putting Britain down. They still have a lot of good things. I'm just saying, Britain is already far on its way to decline. The question is, how many years before Americans start filling that description?
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, we're almost there now.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What I was thinking and watching the thing, how good is participating in this last election that's coming up and put Trump back in the seat that.
Could you say that on the microphone?
I've been watching a long time, and the day of the Sabbath, and I think our church need to get back and put Trump back in, just because of the things that's going on. That's my thoughts, and I wish to hear from others that seem to back off from politics.
What the gentleman said was, he thinks Trump winning the election will help America morally. Most of us would agree with that. You probably already know that. Not that Trump is a street fighter from New York and not a religious man, and he would tell you that, so I'm not, by the way, trying to say anything otherwise. But the other party, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, the other party has become ungodly. I saw this in the 212 convention. The Democrats booed God. I actually never thought I'd see a large group, like 700 people, booing God. Did anybody else see that but me?
That's all, yeah.
Yeah. That was way back in '08, I believe.
Was it 08 or 212?
No, it might have been, no, I think it was '08.
08? Well, I heard in the 2018, whatever they call it, God was not mentioned in their platform. I was told that. I haven't actually read it, but I believe it.
Well, if you think throughout history, every government has been corrupt. They have almost, now I'm not talking about America so much, but you know the bureaucrats in America who really run things because the presidents come and go. So the third level, fourth level bureaucrats are really the ones running things behind the scene. They're the swamp that is kind of running and the government. And you've got to know, European Union has no checks, no balances for corruption. They don't have a constitution. They don't have a place you can go and check these leaders above the people and hold them to account. There's no facilitation for that. There's nothing in the works for that. So these people can be as corrupt as they want. I mean, we're seeing all this stuff with sons and daughters and relatives being put on energy boards or this board or that board because you're a politician, you're rich, you have power in the United States, you can send them our money. So they put your kids on the board, so they'll get your money or whatever it is they want. I mean, that's just as corrupt as it gets. And you know, a European Union's got to be even worse than that. So, I mean, other large government, but it's been throughout history that's been, well, you do something for me, I can do something for you.
I mean, that's the one thing that, you know, President Trump has done because he's not a politician. He has basically shined the light on all this, things that we really didn't know was going on. We may have suspicions of it, but with him now, it's coming out, and it's both sides. I mean, there's just so much corruption going on that we maybe had an idea about, but we really didn't know. And now we're seeing it, and it's just making everybody angry. It's splitting the country even more because you've got people who are coming down on one side and the other side. But from my viewpoint, I just see corruption all around. And, you know, it's just a matter that right now it's the one party that's having the light shined on them more than the other. And because Donald Trump is the way he is, he doesn't care. He doesn't care if people find out what's going on. He believes in doing what is right or what he thinks is right. And so this stuff is coming out, and we're just seeing more and more of it. And it's kind of funny because you have the Democratic Party who is trying to take down Trump, and they keep shooting themselves in the foot because this stuff keeps coming up. And President Trump is like, brings it out, here it is.
I love watching. He's a master troll to these people. It is hilarious.
And he does. And they
but I think to his point, the church is to have the churches support him, right? More churches support him. I think he has a huge nominal Christian following more so now than he did when he was elected. As far as the Church of God churches, I can't speak for any of the rest of them. I'm assuming, based on feedback I get from people in the church, this church kind of supports him because we understand. I mean, a large number of these members of the church, not the church itself as a whole, but I mean the members, because they understand he's not a Christian as we understand Christians anyway. But he is more so in tune with things that, like making Jerusalem the capital of Israel. And I think the biggest reason why people in churches now support him is abortion. I mean, he's got the Planned Parenthood standing on their heads right now, don't know what to do with him, because he's shutting them down right and left, his policies, and it's making people braver to stand up and say, we don't want this stuff. But other Church of God churches, other break-off and different groups, I don't know what their philosophy or policies are, so.
But I'm saying we need to get on board to make other levels of Christ and the other levels of angels to be supported all the way through this year coming up. That's what my thoughts been watching our government affairs, and even Turkey right now. Turkey's always been in our side, but this time they're looking for the majority to rule the plantation of all.
I think even with the churches, you've got the churches now that are split. That there's churches that don't support Donald Trump. There's churches that believe abortion is okay, it should be a choice. You've got churches who are teaching homosexuality is okay. I mean, so even the churches can't come together to support Donald Trump because the churches are even divided on what they believe and what they believe is right. Even though we would say it goes against God's word, it's not something the churches should accept, but large groups of churches are accepting it.
We heard a report on the news today that survey of Americans, a smaller percentage of Americans consider America a Christian country than did a decade ago. And the young people are driving it. Large percentage of Americans, they call them non, they have no religion, they don't believe in God, no affiliation. And younger people are a larger percentage of that number. And they say it's because the driving culture in America makes Christianity and practicing Judaism, they consider them bad and negative. I know
They consider it stupid, just a waste of time.
And that is affecting young people especially. I'm going to throw out an opinion, just from a few people I've seen. Non-practicing Jews are often some of the most extremist. In other words, they're Jews, and they admit they're Jews, and they do a few Jewish things, but they don't like their religious cousins. They reject the Bible as as their relatives used to understand it. And a lot of them are in Hollywood, and they're some of the most radical anti-God people out there. And I'm told, if this offends anybody, you can tell me, I'll apologize later. I'm told that Bernie Sanders is a non-practicing Jew, and in some Senate committees where nominees were coming up, and he asked them if they had any religious beliefs, and if they said yes, he said that kind of dogma doesn't belong in government. We can't put you through. Now, there are enough Republicans out voting, so he didn't block too many people, but he doesn't want people with religious views in our government in any way, shape, or form. Is that a shocker?
No. I mean, I think if you've got people who have any kind of religious background, you put them in government, then they're not going to support the socialist programs. And the things like, the right to abortion and homosexuality and the things that have been pushed through and the multiple different genders besides male and female that they've come up with now. If people who have a religious background are governing us, they're not going to allow those things to pass through. So you don't want that in your government if that's what you're trying to push through.
Oh, I probably shouldn't tell this little joke, but I'll tell it anyway. There were two boys walking out of school at the end of school one day, and the one boy said to the other, we just learned today there are now 56 genders. What do you think of that? And the other boy says, no, there are 2 genders and 54 new forms of mental illness.
Anybody who says, I identify as, it's the same thing as saying, I'm pretending to be. There is no difference.
And they got them now, as I understand it, where you can wake up in the morning and feel you want to be a woman, and then at night, in the evening, you decide you want to be a man. I'm not making that up. He's kidding us. You can switch around. Who knows what pronouns to call you?
I heard they're going to make Bruce Jenner a new superhero character. He's going to be the member of the X-Men.
Isn't that wonderful? Oh, I'm so happy for our kids.
You didn't, when you thought it couldn't get any worse.
The reason we're bringing all this sort of thing up is because to be a strong nation, I think it's more than just military guns and planes. I mean, that's part of it, but it's having people that are strong, determined. Does that make sense? With strong values. If someone were to ask, why did America, I think, shock people with how strong the Americans were in World War II, I think at least it surprised the Japanese. They thought actually, the Japanese high command, this is really funny. They looked at Hollywood movies and compared to the life in the Orient, and they, if you remember the movies from 39 and 1940 and all those, they look at those movies and say, those Americans are decadent and weak. They won't be able to stand up to us. We'll just roll over because we're, the Japanese soldiers are all that, samurai discipline stuff. And the one top admiral said, no, I went to Harvard, and the Americans are prouder than you think they are. We shouldn't attack Pearl Harbor. We should attack the Russians instead. If they had done that, they might have won the war. He said, let the sleeping giant sleep a little longer. Obviously, he was right. Americans were disciplined, hardworking. You ask your grandparents about World War II, there was very little cheating on the rationing. Most everybody worked hard. The young men and some young women went to war, and they were tough, disciplined. Do you think our current generation could put together an army of 13, 14, 15 million soldiers who could, some of those jungles in the Pacific could really do that today?
I don't see the evidence of it. I don't think even, as back as 9/11, when the country kind of came together after the terrorist attacks, I don't even think this country can come together over any kind of attack now. I just don't have the belief that they will. We're just so divided over things that even if I believe that, it's wrong for them to attack us or we should fight back against them, I don't want to agree with you because you're on the other side. And so I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to work with you, and I'm not going to cooperate with you.
I have relatives, at least these are the stories I've heard. One of my aunts, or great aunt, this is way back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, had a restaurant. At one time it was in Memphis and later went to St. Louis. But while she was in Memphis, she could sleep on her weekend receipts, because the banks had opened on Monday, under a mattress in a screened porch, because of hot summers and locked up. And she would be safe. Because there was not that much stealing. Most people were family-oriented. Most went to church. I'm not saying they were right about everything, but they believed in God and were reasonable. I mean, there were some bad people, but not that many. If a business owner tried that today, they'd be dead in a few weeks. They got to have the whatever they call the armored truck pick up the money. And even still, if you're in a small store in the wrong neighborhood, you're still in danger. And a lot of people, according to my relatives, didn't lock their doors at night, didn't take the keys out of their cars or trucks, and rarely did anybody break in or steal. Have you heard the same stories? Mm-hmm. From the 1930s, 40s, and early 50s?
Yeah.
One lady is saying that, right? You want to give him the mic or her the mic.
Well, we got one back there.
We got one
back there.
Start with him.
I think the breakdown of morality, what they're trying to do is break down our morality. To have religion, to have faith in God, regardless of what religion you are, they want to break down the morality. Because if they can break that down, they can then control society. They are now in control. For us to have a belief is a threat to their control. Yeah, the people trying to control us, to break us down as a country, to break us down as a society. That's their goal. Media is a big part of it. I mean, they are a huge part of breaking down society, and our belief, the fact that we're here, is a threat to that.
Every socialist or every dictatorship has to get rid of religion. If you have faith in God, you don't need government. If you erase God, the only thing left is government. And that's one of the tactics to get us to the point to look at government as our God. That's what the Soviet Union did. That's what the Chinese did and have done. They constantly, the Chinese don't care. They'll go after Christians, Muslims, anybody, and shut them down. They got to replace religion they got to get rid of religion to replace it with the government. That's why Bernie Sanders was saying religion has no place in government, because government's the God. That's what they want. Then that's all these people. If you look at every single one of these people in the media today, in news, in the government, that's a socialist, AOC, I call her Chiquita Khrushchev, but all these people, all these far left socialists, they have no talent, they produce nothing, never have, never met a payroll, never owned a business. They only have one single talent, and that's to manipulate others. And that's how they gained power. That's how Hitler did it. He had no talent. He was not a good artist. He was a lousy artist. Bernie Sanders, they say he's an artist. He's probably as bad or worse than Hitler. These people have no talent. The only thing they can do to be successful in life is to destroy countries and take over and run them. And that's what socialism is. Most of the socialists they have no talent. They have no way to make it on their own. So they're going to have the government. They want to make sure the government provides for everybody, and they're going to run it. And when you ask them why it's never been successful, the answer is because we haven't done enough of it yet. Do more socialism, pour more money in. It'll eventually work. No.
Or if somebody as wonderful as me had been in charge,
Yeah.
it would have worked.
That's right. That's what they say. That's their excuse every time. They did it wrong. No, they did it right. It just doesn't work.
And also, if they do have religion, it's religion that is subordinate to the state or the dictator, statism. Like in China, as I understand it, they do have some churches, but the Catholic Church made a deal with China, where the Communist Party picks the bishops and archbishops and cardinals. The Communist Party does, notice that. And the church approves the messages they give. And they also have government-approved churches, where they watch them, and I guess the sermons tell them, Chairman Xi is a wonderful guy, and it's good to do whatever the government tells you to do. But they crack down on and intimidate the unregistered churches, the underground churches, the churches that the government cannot control. I don't know how it will work in the future, but the super pope will somehow get people to believe. I know that when we say it, it sounds unbelievable, but it's in the Bible, to worship a man, to worship the leader. And I guess they will do it.
Well, the Bible says that if it wasn't for God's help, this beast power would fool even the elect, which means it can't outwardly be a socialist form of government dictatorship. It's going to look like or appear like something that called out people would accept, but it's going to be fake. It's going to be phony. It's going to be a sham.
I mean, for me, that's why when a lot of the sermons you hear, we're always talking about being prepared and having that foundation, because just as we've already talked about, if you start taking God out of the government, you start taking God out of our society, then you don't really understand who God is or what God's about. So then it becomes easier that when you have something like this, that you get a state that says, you know, we're going to recognize this group as the official religion. And their definition of God is the only acceptable definition. Well, if you really don't have a good definition or a good foundation, most people are just going to go, yeah, whatever, that's fine with me. And they're just going to easily move over to that religious definition. Those of us who have a better foundation, and just as down through history, when you go against the state government, you're a heretic. And we know what happens to people who are declared heretics. And so once you start doing that, then they start destroying or trying to destroy those who believe differently. And again, most people, if you don't have faith, what are you going to do? They're going to fold and accept whatever the state government, state religion is, so they don't have to be persecuted. And so if you don't have that foundation, if you don't have an understanding of God and that faith, it's going to be very hard to stand up against that.
We have to really know there's a real God. All that things in our magazine and others about evolution being outrageous, we really should trust that that's true. I mean, because evolution is saying the complexity of the world is purely by accident. You know how ridiculous that sounds? And I realize biological, we can't see the biology inside ourselves, but boy, we are very complex. Scientists that study it, every cell in your body is like a little chemical factory doing all kinds of stuff, controlled by DNA and some other stuff that we don't yet, at least I don't fully understand yet. I don't think they do either. But you know, you think about it just from the code that's put in by two parents, whatever animal or plant, creates, you know, elephants, whales, human beings. The one thing we know about computer programming is someone has to really work hard to program the computer to do exactly what it's supposed to do. Well, apparently the DNA and all that other stuff that the parents put into a newborn child or newborn elephant, whatever it is, creates this new animal. There's no way that that kind of information could happen by accident. Because by accident, things break down. They don't get more and more and more and more complex. But we have to know there really is a God. I think evolution is part of why young people don't believe in God.
That's why, was it Marx? Who was it who used that in Soviet Union? Once they had the theory of evolution, they were able to glom onto that and use that to replace religion with state. And evolution became the state religion.
I remember reading a story that in Cuba, supposedly, that they would go into the schools and they have all the little children lay their heads down on their desks, and then they would put candy or some little gift on their desks and then tell them all to look up. And it's like, now, how did that happen? You know, who was it that did that? And some of them would say, you know, well, it was a miracle, it was God, or whatever. And they went, no, it was Castro who did this. He's the one that provided it. He's the one that brings you these things. He's the one you need to trust. To put it in their minds that Castro was God, to supplant God. And again, if you don't know and you don't have anything to fight against it, you begin to accept those things.
Well, they're doing the exact same thing in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Not with candy, but it's in the textbooks, it's in the school plans, it's in the teachers' planning. The teachers got it, now they're giving it to our kids. It's the exact same thing.
I watched a Discovery Channel program, it's been several years ago now, that went through all the plagues and you showed science how these things could have happened. And I thought, this is really great. This is cool to see how all these things we read about in the Bible, how they could come to be. And I thought, this is really great. And then somebody pointed out to me, but don't you understand what they just did? They just took God's word and said it was not supernatural, it was scientific and natural, so you don't need a God for these things to happen. And I was like, I hadn't even thought about that, but that's exactly right. Mm-hmm. They're taking and saying, there's no miracles here, there's no supernatural, this is just nature occurring. And taking away from all that went on during the Exodus, saying it was just nature.
And why do they have the need to do that?
To get rid of God.
Get rid of God.
Mm-hmm.
They feel they have to do that.
Because in a way, the word Antichrist really means in place of Christ. So they're putting men and their ideas in the place of Christ. And we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to look at Revelation 13. It's about the 4th paragraph. Ken's going to read that. We're going to discuss this for a minute because it kind of can fit into what we're saying.
All right. And that no one may buy or sell except one has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number.
Okay, and you all know the number is 666. Okay, here's
I
the...
have a question.
Yes,
before
sir.
Why do we need to know how to calculate it if they give us the answer?
Yeah, that's a good question. By the way,
Sorry, I didn't-
you all probably know that in Latin and Greek, and probably some other languages, the letters also have numerical value.
Like Ronald.
Like L is 50, isn't that right in Latin? X
Yes,
is 10,
yep,
and
yep.
M is 100, is that right? Some I remember because they pushed them on us so much when we were kids, but... So whatever language, maybe when you translate his name back into Latin, it'll add up to 666. But I don't worry about the number. We won't figure that out until it's probably too late. Guess what this guy's name is in Latin? Or maybe in Greek or some other language. It's 666. But you're going to ask, we used to ask, well, how could they enforce something like that? And now the answer is becoming more clear to me every day. Obviously, our younger generation is becoming weaker and more decadent. They live on their phones. Have you noticed that? Mm-hmm. Well, what if, I'm speculating, but somewhere in the future, they get a great new system where you have to go maybe twice a year to certain churches or other places and confess your loyalty and support to the beast, which they know real true Christians would not do. Historically, that happened in the Roman Empire, too. And maybe do or say certain other things. And they'll have cameras watching people. You know that China now, with the help of Google, has millions of cameras all over China, and they're giving people social scores. And this one guy on the radio said, I assume he knows what you're talking about, there are certain churches the Chinese consider unofficial and bad news. If you go to one of those churches, your social score gets dumped hundreds of points down. Or if you get calls from too many people associated, because that's also on the computer, your score gets dumped. And when your score gets low enough,
You can't travel. You can't buy certain things. You can't go certain places. You can't fly out of the country if you're, all kinds of things happens when your score goes down.
Now, it'll probably take the Chinese a few more years with the help of Google to perfect that. But can you see how some powerful government in Europe that has a lot of power in the Western world could abuse a system like that?
I think there's one or two of the Democratic presidential candidates who I'd like to see that here. They mentioned they'd like to see that.
Social score.
Yeah.
Was Beto O'Rourke hinting around at that kind of thing?
I don't know. All I know is he wants to take your AR.
There was a show there, it was science fiction, because I enjoy science fiction, but there was a show, and they had an episode, and I had never heard of the social score, and this was before I ever heard of it, that the episode was that they went to this time where there was social scores, and they had big, huge TV screens everywhere in public, wherever you went, and people's faces would pop up, and their social score would be there. And if you cut me off in traffic, I'm giving you a bad score, and boom, it would immediately change. And he got to the point where that if your score got so low, or maybe it's so high, but anyway, if your score went the wrong way, that you then went to like
Re-education.
no re-education. You then went on trial, and basically the people would then vote with their social apps whether you lived or whether you died. And most of the time, once it started going the wrong way, people just jumped on the bandwagon. Yeah, we need to kill them, and it would take off and fly. And you start thinking about that. Well, I mean, if your neighbor does something you don't like, I don't like them. There goes the social score, starts dropping off. They come on somebody's radar, That's how you get rid of people. So again, as far as us, if we have a belief and we're not conforming, you can bet that our neighbors and things, family members, start reporting that, and if they start having that social score, it can have a real effect. And, that was science fiction. It's like, it's silly, crazy. And now you find out in China, they're actually doing that.
And the buying and selling thing is, now when you go on airplanes, because we just experienced this, the plane was overcrowded, and they were saying, well, all the details about, they said, well, if you want to be able to add to this airplane, they want some people to drop off something add on, go to our Delta app on your smartphone, and we'll give you your, if you made the flight, we'll give you your new seat arrangements, whatever. And people are using their smartphones for ticketing and for getting on the plane and buying and selling. It's like the smartphone is replacing money.
No, that's coming.
Can you see, once something, or credit cards, but I can see smartphone maybe is even easier, because they could instantly, electronically, cut you off.
Well, cryptocurrency has taken off. That's money that's made on a computer. It's created out of nothing. It really is nothing. You can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't handle it, you can't, but it's out there. MasterCard and Visa are researching it. A lot of the big banks are researching how they're going to implement it. Facebook's bringing their own out next year of cryptocurrency. Technology is catching up with revelation. Things that we've heard about and read about for years in Revelation, we always wondered how this could happen. Well, technology is making this stuff able to come into existence. You've heard of Credit Karma, the app Credit Karma? Anybody use it? Credit Karma is owned by Google. Credit Karma is not one of the three major banking credit systems that, where you get your rating. If you do things that Credit Karma likes, your score goes up. You ever see the commercials? You do what the Credit Karma app likes, all of a sudden your car you go from a little car to a bigger car, or to a nicer looking husband or wife. All these things happen if you do what Credit Karma says. It's a commercial, sounds wonderful. It's Google. They own it. They own the company they own Credit Karma. So it's a setup for do what we like, and we'll let you borrow money, and we'll loan you this, you loan you that. It's the same thing. It's kind of the first step, and there's more and more of these apps and these companies coming into existence. Technology is catching up to revelation.
And I always thought the mark of the beast, because mark is German for dollar, and some other languages, could be the picture of the beast on a dollar bill or credit card. But that also could be done electronically.
Oh yeah, there's T-shirts out there. I got chipped today. You ever seen these people at some of their businesses are volunteering to get chipped? I got chipped today, like a cat. It's going to be commonplace probably in a few years.
There was one company where you had to put a chip in your hand to work for them for lab purposes and other credit purposes. If you want the job, you take the chip. And I'm not saying don't take it or take it, but all I'm saying is if something like this is developed and worked on real well, the day could come where this powerful government, which will control banking and everything else, will say, you worship the beast, or at least pretend to. It's probably good enough for them. And don't go to any Sabbath-keeping churches and for some other stuff they don't want you to do. And you'll be able to buy and sell. You don't do it, and all of a sudden, when you try to flash your credit card at the store, clerk will say, there's a hole on your card. You got to see the government bureau of whatever they call it.
There won't be a card. You'll have to flash your hand or whatever,
And that even worse. There's a hole on your account. You got to go to the government office. Hey, let's report this guy. You can think of bad things. I'm not saying that's the end of the world. There'll probably be a black market, but it would make it harder on true Christians. Yeah. I believe that day is coming. Now, I'm not saying it's soon. I think America is not America's not the kind of country that would do that to that extreme. But, you know, the stuff the Nazis did, they made the Jews wear the armbands and stuff. That's the same principle. I mean, it's the same kind of principle. And the people in Europe cooperated. The gendarmes of France cooperated with the isolation and putting the Jews on trains on a regular basis to go to death camp. That is a fact. All I'm saying is the brainwashing that happened in Europe could happen again. So, but God can protect us, but we need to stick with God.
Yeah, I've talked to people in the past that when you start talking about this kind of thing, they overreact, in my opinion. I mean, you have people who, you know, UPC code. I'm not going to have anything that's got a UPC code because that's the mark of the beast. Or I'm not going to have a credit card because that's the mark of the beast. I don't want to accidentally, you know, do. It's my firm belief that this is a choice we will make. You're not going to accidentally, you know, commit to the mark of the beast or become part. It's going to be a choice that will be given to you, and you will know that it is a choice. As long as you are where you're supposed to be at, you know, in your life as a Christian, again, that foundation, you will see and you will understand that I am either choosing God or I am choosing the beast. And then we will have to make that choice. You're not going to accidentally, you know, oops, I used a credit card and now, you know, I've sinned and
I've heard the social security number, all
Social-
kinds of
right.
stuff. But, and somehow it'll possibly be tied to Sunday worship.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think that'll be the key, is that you will have to go in and, like Dr. Ricks was talking about, support that church. So again, you will know that that's the choice you have to make. Either you support them or you don't. And just real quick, I just want to mention everybody, because we talk about these things and people get nervous, they get worried. Remember Matthew 6 and verse 31 through 34, it says, "Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek, for your heavenly Father knoweth that you have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof." God will take care of us. If we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, it really doesn't matter about all this stuff. This is just so we know what's going on, but God will take care of us and he will provide all that we need.
I think that we're slowly being acclimated, though, through the other pieces, all the pieces we had talked about before. We're being acclimated into it. The mark of the beast, even though we know to stay away, we're slowly being acclimated through our credit cards. It was just exposed that they can control us through the credit cards. And it's a system that they're slowly working us into, and we have to be careful of it. They're much more advanced at doing this than we are at preventing it from happening.
I understand that the man was concerned about credit card use and other things. My general statement is, I do not think the United States of America, I think there's one guy with, this is another Feasite, he believes that New York City is Babylon the Great mentioned in Revelation 17 and 18. Obviously, that is not the case. Don't worry about going to New York City. It's not Babylon the Great. America is not going to be the center of all this. Now, America might be under their control or domination, possibly if America gets weak enough, but whatever. So I would not, the truth is a lot of stores are going cashless because of crime. They really are.
There's countries.
I can give you even stories where they say, well, we can't have our tellers, certain neighborhoods, with cash because they'll get robbed by the druggies. So we have to use credit cards. So I'm not saying don't use credit cards, don't use your social security number. God will take care of us. Do what you, and if you travel a lot, you almost have to have credit cards. The way it is now, a lot of places, we're not going to give you a rental car on cash. Are you crazy? I mean, that's how they think.
Right. Or a hotel room.
Yeah. So my point is, don't worry about it too much, but the bad guys are probably working to perfect the system. And someday, probably in Europe, and maybe even in the Middle East, but probably at least in Europe, and satellites that they control probably in Latin America and other places, they will implement some system. But I think we Christians will see it coming, don't you think?
Yeah.
God will take care of us. And one thing I agree with what Kelly said. You will know, especially with all the stuff we know, you will know the choice you're making. When they say, you got to go to this Sunday church or go to certain services and hail the beast, hail the beast or whatever, hail Caesar, you will know what you're doing. Or you can't go to church on the Sabbath.
Or worship the image of the beast,
Or, yeah.
They also have electronic tattoos now. I mean, they can tattoo you, and you could pass that over a reader, and that will interact with the electronic tattoo. What if that's in the form of a beast, of the beast? All these things are possible now that weren't possible a very few years ago.
The beast picture could be on your hand somewhere as part of and you have to go to certain places or churches and have it scanned so they know you were there as part of the Worship the Beast service. And if you don't, you get on the bad list. Believe me, if you're on the beast bad list, but you're on God's good list, that means the plagues that are listed in the book of Revelation won't harm you. They'll harm the other people. And that's a good story to read, too, how even though God plagues them, they literally, it says they blaspheme God and refuse to repent. The decadence is going to get that bad. It's hard for me to believe it, but that's what the Bible says. But we won't do that. I think we're going to, what we have to worry about is being seduced slowly out of God's church, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Little by little. Maybe you get offended because somebody in the church likes somebody else better than they like you. You know how personalities, right?
Yes, yeah. It's part of our human nature that we're still human, we're still going through things, and anything Satan can do to get us to fall away, he's going to do. That's why that's part of that foundation we have to build, and we have to stick to it because it's so easy in today's society to be offended about things. I mean, to be offended because you are called a she or because you're called a he. Oh no, that's offensive. You can't do that. And I mean, even some countries, it's against the law to use those pronouns because they'll write you a ticket, fine you, put you in jail because you've used that. So those things, if we're not steadfast and doing what we're supposed to be doing, we will just, it's not worth the fight. It's not worth the trouble to drive from wherever down here to Myrtle Beach because, I got to go through checkpoints, they're going to have the police there. It's, it's not worth my trouble. That's where they want to push us to, and that's where we have to fight it. That's where we have to stay strong and no, I'm going to wherever the feast is at, I'm going to get there, whoever I have to get there. If I have to hike, then I'll hike. Whatever I have to do, I'm going to get there. We have to be that determined to get there. No matter what the rest of the world's doing, whatever else is going on, we have to stay focused and do what God has shown us that we're supposed to do. And if you stay there and you do that, you don't have to worry about all this other stuff. You're going to see it happen, you're going to know it's happening, but there's nothing to worry about because God has given us promises and he's going to take care of us. But we have to do our part, and that's the part that we have to really work on.
I noticed that the people in the church and the ones that seem to stay have a attribute that many that maybe are no longer here or don't attend didn't have. We're pretty stubborn. We're pretty dog stubborn that we're going to hold on, maintain. Nobody's going to change our minds. And they're more, and the group that's left, that seems to be a more dominant trait. Not playing games.
I know we're about out of time, but I thought I'd mention something about two potentially future programs. One we started to do, but the
Do you have
feast.
time for me to comment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dr. Riggs, I think if we're worried about ourselves making it, we're not going to make it. The God that we worship, he can protect us wherever we're at. We all had a mind set on Petra one time, and I went to Petra. I went through there in 1983, my wife and Ruth and her husband. I don't have any desire to go back. And I did mark my cave, though. It was a 2-bedroom. But, and also right inside the sick, the little narrow gauge you go in, they had a Kentucky Fried Chicken, not Kentucky Fried, they had fried chicken restaurant. I got a picture of us sitting there eating fried chicken in Petra. But I don't have any desire to go back. And you read through Psalm 91, you see where our protection's at. And, God said he brought the Israelites out of Egypt on the wings of an eagle. and they walked every step of the way. The God can protect us right where we're at, and we don't have to worry about that. We just need to have our minds on doing God's work. And the God that I worship, He can save me anywhere. If it's sitting in my outhouse or somewhere like that, He can save me. He can protect me.
There's an image.
I mean, I don't have one now. We used to have. But I'm just saying, wherever I'm at, our God that we worship can protect us. So we need to keep that in mind. And I don't plan to go to Petra or anywhere else. Like I said, I did mark my cave just in case.
In case you didn't hear that, Robert Nunnery said, we shouldn't be so focused on ourselves. Don't worry about it. God can take care of us, even in an outhouse. Ken?
No.
Anyway, two potential future programs. Unless Ken can't do it, we will probably be podcasting next Friday.
Yeah.
Because we should be home by then. Two of the topics we want to look at in the near future, one is conveying moral values to the next generation. That's one of the problems as society degenerates. That's one of the problems. How can parents push back, and why haven't parents pushed back more? Somebody asked me we should look into that. I think it'd be worth a discussion. I don't know if we can come up with any magic answers, but at least we can understand what has not been happening. The parents have not been, even the morality that our grandparents knew, the young people today don't know it. Would you all agree that's probably true? It's that obvious. And the other would be the book of Daniel. There's one, I don't want to mention it because give it away, but there's one prophecy that Daniel made, and you realize he wrote that 25 centuries ago, that seems to be coming true in a surprising way, that it's just one more proof the Bible is inspired. It's a real short prophecy. I don't want to mention it now, but I think tune in to see us discuss it, and I think, well, hopefully it'll be informative.
Sounds good. Are we done?
I think so.
Are we logging off? All right, we're going to log off, but if you stick around for a minute, I have a couple of things. So good night, everyone. We appreciate everyone for coming, and we'll see you all again next week.
We're happy you could make it, so glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear.